Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Red Raptor Writes. You guys at home have been waiting long enough. Dinosaur Revolution is no doubt the most divisive series yet, with some fans who absolutely love it and others who have solidified a deep hatred. Okay, that's a little dramatic, but you get the picture. It's also the second most requested series, being beaten out only by BBC's Planet Dinosaur. That review comes next, so stay tuned for that. As for Dinosaur Revolution, it's mainly about how much our understanding of dinosaurs has changed over the last 50 or so years. Episodes 1 and 3 feature shorter segments highlighting different prehistoric creatures from different times to show off some new discoveries. 2 and 4, however, tell the stories of an Allosaurus and a Tyrannosaurus family, respectively. Nice, but how does the series hold up scientifically? Is it worth the hype or worth the hate? Let's dig this up. While I'm sure there are those of you out there who really want me to tear the show apart, spoiler alert, this review will generally be more positive. There are some missteps, trust me, we'll get there, but I can't ignore the sheer amount Revolution gets right. The overall premise is double Shrek great, even if it isn't all that original. The filmmakers successfully get the message across that, again, so much has changed in the recent decades. The dinosaur renaissance kicked off in the late 60s with John Ostrom's work on Deinonychus. What followed was the realization that dinosaurs weren't slow, lumbering, stupid animals, but were often fast, sometimes intelligent, active, and warm-blooded. But even since the Renaissance, the 21st century has seen an eruption of amazing discoveries. It seems like every week we get a new Hadrosaurid, or Titanosaurid, or Spinosaurid. Each episode works to bust some old paleo tropes. Instead of lizard-like dinos, we get many bird-like portrayals. Instead of evolutionary dead ends, this clade was, and still is, wildly successful. Even to this day, there are more species of dinosaurs than mammals.
To this day!
Anyone who watches this Dino doc will pretty much be caught up on the current views of Dinosauria. This leads us to one of the show's many bright spots that pretty much everyone agrees is done well, the designs. That perfect balance is struck between looking cool and accurate at the same time. Not a single pronated wrist is shown. I think I'm gonna cry.
Beautiful, isn't it?
The vast majority of animals that should have feathers do have feathers. The especially bird-like Maniraptoran, such as Velociraptor, Utahraptor, Troodon, etc., are given proper wings, although they should have less downy feathering over the body and more contour feathers, but that's a nitpick. The first episode points out that many dinosaurs, particularly theropods, had fantastic vision. It's certainly reasonable to assume they would have seen more colors than us humans, just like modern birds. To get the point across, the subjects are extra colorful and vibrant. Great touch. Many speculative structures are shown, like wattles, pouches, and bad hairstyles. This Utahraptor even cosplays as the Union's own General Ambrose Burnside. Unfortunately, the non-bony soft tissue structures rarely ever preserve in fossils, so paleo artists need to use their imaginations. Much of the credit here goes to the director David Krentz, a paleo artist who had some experience in the past with Disney's Dinosaur, but was allowed to bring his creativity to life here. Onto some specifics, while the Ornitholestes is sadly left out of the feather game, no crest is shown, so that's a win in my book. You may remember it having a crest in Walking with Dinosaurs. That's because paleontologist Gregory S. Paul interpreted the crushed end of the only skull as the start of a nasal crest. But in the early 2000s, this idea was rejected, since experts realized that this appearance was only due to damage. Dinosaur Revolution also shows off a Majungasaurus that, wouldn't you know it, actually looks like Majungasaurus. Rough rugose skull, little horn on top of the head, long body, tiny arms, shorter legs. Yup, this is certainly the deli Cretaceous sausage we all know and love.
So good.
Better yet, the narrator calls Majungasaurus. Crazy, I know. I'm happy to finally include Miragaia in a video since we haven't seen much of Jurassic Portugal. One notable feature that separates it from other stegosaurids is its longer neck. Miragaya got jealous of the sauropods and wanted to see what the hype was about with 17 neck vertebrae. That's more than many sauropods and nearly double Huangosaurus's 9 and Stegosaurus's 10. But like many of its relatives, this dino carried these large shoulder spikes that were probably not fun to encounter. For its first and possibly only appearance on the Dinodoc tier list, Miragaya is done justice. The early sauropodomorph Glacialosaurus also makes an appearance in Episode 1 in early Jurassic Antarctica. Their fossil remains are very incomplete. All paleontologists have are portions of the hind limbs and foot, but at least the material is diagnostic enough to know it was a massospondylid, so the Glacialosaurus we see here is heavily based on the family's namesake, Massospondylus. In previous Dinodocs, we've seen early sauropodomorphs that were quadrupedal or could switch between walking on all fours and just hind limbs. Revolution gives us audiences an updated look, with Glacialosaurus acting as a strict biped. Those arms and claws were free to grab branches and swipe things. The Rahonavis has been the subject of some debate, whether it was capable of flight. Part of this debate centers on whether it's actually a chimera, a mixture of dromaeosaurid and primitive bird bones. This interpretation has been refuted by its co-describer, so it seems like the genus is valid. 2007 and 2013 research have supported the idea of flight, since Rahonavis had larger wings than even Archaeopteryx and shoulders mobile enough for flapping. Its depiction in the Dinodoc passes the vibe check. Not only are the dinosaurs done well, but the pterosaurs too. All too often, we see their wings fold inwards towards the body as they walk on the ground. Well, not here. The different genera shown, Rhamphorhynchus and Anhanguera, hold their wings in the correct backwards-facing position when grounded. Now we can all enjoy a documentary where no creatures have horribly disfigured arms. Protoceratops too received some redemption. Both Chased by Dinosaurs and The Truth About Killer Dinosaurs showed them with these flimsy little tails like their larger relatives. Revolution gets it right with a very tall, long tail. Let's continue with Tyrannosaurus, which appears in so many dino documentaries. Can't someone focus on late Cretaceous India with Rajasaurus and the Deccan Traps?
Never.
For the first time in these documentaries, we finally see Tyrannosaurus juveniles done right. For the past 20 years, paleontologists have argued that the previously described genus, Nanotyrannus, is actually an invalid taxon, simply representing juvenile T-Rex. The validity of Nanotyrannus has been, and still is, among the most heated debates in paleontology. The majority of paleontologists agree that the dwarf tyrant is in fact a young Rex. Paper after paper comes to the same conclusion. In 2020, two potential nanospecimens, nicknamed Jane and Petey, were found by Dr. Holly Woodward to be teenage Rexes. This genus took about 20 years to reach maturity, and they were 13 and 15 respectively, so these specimens were still young. So what does this mean for Revolution? Well, this is another positive check. Krantz and Company portrayed the juvenile as far leaner, sleeker, its snout is elongated and limbs proportionally longer. Young Rexes express these ancestral conditions carried over from earlier Tyrannosauroids, so as the Tyrannosaurus grows up, it becomes much more robust, expressing descendant conditions. This is seen in other Tyrannosaurids, so it makes sense. When dinosaurs roamed America, gave talk to these ideas, but you couldn't tell through the models. Then Jurassic Fight Club went with the Nanotyrannus idea while showing the young T-Rex to appear just like their parents. Dinosaur Revolution gets a good noodle star for following through on these heated ideas. Alright, so while we're on the subject of Tyrannosaurus, let's talk about some current events. This month in March of 2022, a new paper led by Gregory S. Paul hypothesized that the genus Tyrannosaurus, which usually only contains the species T-Rex, actually houses 3 species from the end of the Cretaceous in North America. He split T-Rex into 3 species, T-Rex, along with T. imperator and T. regina. Now we have the Tyrant Lizard King, Emperor, and Queen.
At Burger King with my Burger Queen, can I get a large fry?
Well, not quite. Many other paleontologists such as Thomas Carr, Thomas Holtz, and Phil Curry disagree with this assessment, mainly because the paper didn't provide nearly enough evidence to justify such a drastic change. Paul used femur width and slight variation in dentition to justify his proposal. Considering those two things are known to vary by age and individual in tyrannosaurids, they seem like a weak foundation. Dr. Carr recently released a far more detailed paper on the genus in 2020 that examined 31 specimens through 1,850 traits. Not only did Carr find no evidence of multiple species, but not even evidence of sexual dimorphism within a species. He was that thorough. And to keep beating a dead horse, his study also found no evidence of a separate Nanotyrannus genus. All proposed specimens don't group together like you'd expect if they were their own genus. Instead, they represent separate growth stages.
There is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and there is no
Nanotyrannus.
So, all in all, I agree with the scientists who disagree. In my non-professional opinion, Tyrannosaurus should include only one species, which is shown in Dinosaur Revolution. That is, until the evidence says otherwise. Although this wasn't even a thought in anyone's minds 11 years ago. Nice work, I guess. Okay, these positives are going on for a while. There's so much material here that even with a bloated positive section, I can't touch on every detail or every design, so one more positive. During the Mesozoic, mammals are generally viewed as kinda stagnant, not doing much since they're only living in the dinosaur's shadow, both literally and figuratively. That's why I appreciate Revolution being a shooting star breaking the mold by showing that mammals and their relatives still diversified during the age of dinosaurs. The creators get this point across through the Castorocata, which superficially resembles a beaver. Heck, the name even means beaver tail. Its diet is the proposed fish eating, which is nice. Then there's also Velaticatherium, a mammal similar to today's flying squirrels, sporting a skin membrane used to glide. Unlike the squirrels we know and love, these guys were insectivores. So, while it is typical to hear that mammals just waited around for dinosaurs to die, the actual science isn't that simple. Paleontology can't fit into easy narratives. As we rapidly approach the present, there is less outdated information than in past Dino docs, but still a few topics to cover. I've already discussed at length mosasaur coloration, their tail flukes, and of course Troodon being an invalid wastebasket taxon, so I won't waste your time with that here. These topics were covered extensively in my reviews of Sea Monsters and Dinosaur Planet, so check those out if you're curious. On to new material. 2015 famously saw the resurrection of Brontosaurus as a valid genus separate from Apatosaurus.
I thought you were dead.
My death was greatly exaggerated.
However, that same study of Diplodocids did not recognize the validity of Dinosaurus. If you'll recall, that's the Portuguese Diplodocid we see in episode 2 that completely wastes the Allosaurus' broken jaw. Instead, the authors reclassified it as a species of the North American Supersaurus. The show writers also bring up a disfigured jaw from the American Allosaurus fragilis and use that as inspiration for their story about Broken Jaw, their fictional A. Europus. I really wish the writers went further with this to emphasize the relationship between the continents in the late Jurassic, specifically the North American Morrison Formation, European Larinia Formation, and African Tendaguru beds. Each of them share very similar fauna, implying some interchange between the land masses. Where America had Brachiosaurus, Europe and Africa had Lusatitan and Giraffatitan respectively. Stegosaurus and Miragaia inhabited both the US and Portugal, while the closely related Kentrosaurus lived in Tanzania. We know Torvosaurus roamed the first two, along with Supersaurus apparently, and then Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus stalked North America, Europe, and possibly Africa, but those specimens are too fragmentary to be sure.
And I won't kill you, because you're just too much fun. I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
It would have been nice if Dinosaur Revolution made these connections along with some speculation from the paleo experts, but I have to take the world how it is, not how I want it to be. Oh, and congratulations are in order for Dr. Thomas Holtz, who finally landed himself in a good show. I'm sure he got sick of having his name associated with garbage.
What'd he say? Garbage?
Now, let's get confusing for a minute to talk about everybody's favorite subject, semantics. I'm sure we've all heard the term raptor get thrown around. It is commonly used in dinosaur names like Oviraptor, Synraptor, Gigantoraptor, and of course Velociraptor. In that context, raptor is Latin for thief or seizer, one who seizes, not one who's been stabbed 20 times. But when you hear the phrase, odds are an image of Jurassic Park comes to mind, since the movies coined the term as a nickname for its velociraptor, and eventually dromaeosaurs in general. The latter is what I use it for. But to go and make things so complicated, sorry Avril, raptor also refers to modern birds of prey. Confusing, I know, but I'm not giving you all this for nothing. Well, A, this gives you context for whenever I use the term in the future, probably as a stand-in for dromaeosaurid, and B, Rahonavis. In Revolution, Rahonavis is called a raptor. This is probably because this little flyer used to be classified as a dromaeosaurid. Either that or they're just calling it a thief, which is strange. On that first point, the Rahonavis is no longer classified as a dromaeosaurid, but pretty much as close to the true birds as one can get in a sister group to them. Its position has been hotly debated over the past few decades, so I wouldn't be surprised if this changes. Utahraptor graces our screens with another appearance, with a pack of them chasing down a young Pterosaurus. Since its description in 1993 from James Kirkland and Robert Gaston, this predator has largely been shown as a scaled-up Deinonychus. This is evident here with that slender, elongated snout and fleet-footedness. I mean, it makes sense, since they're both larger dromaeosaurids from the Cedar Mountain Formation, although the Utahraptor comes from the earlier Yellowcat member. I would be tempted to complain about speedy dromaeosaurids again, but chasing a herd of sauropods doesn't seem like a tall order. As more work has been done on Utahraptor, with a hulking block of them still slowly being prepared and more material being attributed to the genus, we see now that they were much bulkier than expected, with much bigger, thicker heads, almost like a cross between Deinonychus and T-Rex. I'm gonna be upfront with you. If you've seen Dinosaur Revolution before, then your opinion of it most likely depends on your reaction to the cartoony subjects. In the past, we've seen natural, more animalistic takes, and battle-hardened killers who will use any excuse to have a death match. Creative differences took a different approach. Yes, there are many plausible behaviors on display. However, the dinosaurs are very goofified. The two Guanlong, for instance, get a depiction as bumbling losers while they hunt a Castorocata. Kinda like those two goons in Barbie's Princess and the Pauper. I have no idea if anyone remembers that, but I grew up with a younger sister, leave me alone. This problem goes hand in hand with everyone being way too anthropomorphized or made to be more human. It should go without saying, but these are dinosaurs, animals, not people. Unfortunately, examples aren't hard to come by, like how Broken Jaw forms an alliance with the Dinosaurus after they brought down the Torvo together, or that moment when the mommy Cryolophosaurus convinced the dad to challenge the Giga Chad rival. Forgive me for going out on a limb here, but I'm pretty sure that dinosaurs didn't have these big brain levels of complex behaviors.
This is big brain time.
For some, this is enough to totally demerit Revolution, while some others will try to justify these moments. In my experience, they're more of an irritation, not completely derailing the show, but reappearing often enough that it needs to be mentioned. Here's the thing, dinosaurs and paleontology in general, they're interesting enough. You don't need to humanize them, make them fit into these very personal narratives. As long as you're educating audiences and showing them live their lives, that's enough. That's enough to get me engaged all the way. We just saw that with March of the Dinosaurs. On the other hand, sometimes the predators become too monstrous, not acting like a predatory animal, but developing an appetite for endless murder.
Goofy!
Murder?
Goofy, shut the fuck
I
up!
love murder.
Why? Goofy!
The demons told me to.
The pterosaurs literally leaves a trail of dead Miragaia for a sick decoration. And when we get to the Velociraptors too, they Batman a Protoceratops by killing both of its parents for no reason. As predators, you'd expect them to go for the infant or eat one dead parent, but nah, they gotta wipe out the whole family.
They're like animals, and I slaughtered them like animals. I hate them.
In other news, there is a brief moment in an "if you blink you miss it" scene, where it seems like the big yogurt male Cryolophosaurus kangaroo kicks the tied down loser dad by standing on his tail and kicking with his legs. It should go without saying, but dinosaurs couldn't do this. The kangaroo kick idea seems to come from Bakker in some of his old paleo art, and unfortunately caught on during the dinosaur renaissance. I should mention too how their crest incorrectly has a gap in it, seeming like two structures fused together when really they had one solid chunk of bone on their heads. One problem I do have with the designs is the shrink wrapping, mostly in the theropods. Some of them look like they're starving to death. And my last problem here is a minor one. The Anhanguera, a close relative of the Ornithocheirus, is placed at 125 million years ago when it lived later around 110 million years ago. But hey, at least it didn't simp to death. Dinosaur Revolution is a strange one. So much is done right, especially when it comes to the creature designs. A buttload of those bad dino tropes I've been complaining about forever are now gone, paving the way for a much brighter future. But again, there are some serious pitfalls, mainly the very human-like and silly behaviors. It's almost like Animal Farm. Wait a minute. The Revolution? Red title page? Anthropomorphized animals? This is totally an allegory for communism. No wonder why the dinos look like they're starving. But yeah, anyone's rating hinges on how much the silliness bothers them, so any grade can be justified. Since it didn't completely ruin my experience, I can give Dinosaur Revolution a B+. Now, that brings us to what is easily the single most requested video I've ever had, the long-awaited Planet Dinosaur review. Like Monsters Resurrected, it may come in 2 parts. I'll have to see how much content there is to cover. But until then, remember if you enjoyed this video to please leave a like, subscribe, and check out my social media. See you next time.